NOLA Motorsports is riddled with foot-deep puddles around its 2.75 miles this morning, creating a treacherous and slick racing surface for Spec Corvette presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires. It's the Sunday trophy race and the final one for the weekend as the four remaining drivers from yesterday's race gear up for a field invert and go for a slightly longer race. Ben Hocevar led the early moments of Saturday's event, but issues with the motor meant an early retirement, and he handed over victory to his father. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Spec Corvette presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires. My name's Kyle Heyer. On the screen there are all the sponsors and partners that are on board with Spec Corvette, all the parts and pieces for these machines. Of course, Penske Racing shocks for the Spec Series coilovers, the NS2R 295/30/18 tires from Nanking Motorsport, Willwood disc brakes, TPS Motorsports, Redline Oil, Track Spec Motorsports, Spec Racing, and Sparco USA. These cars are C5 coupes or hatches with 380 rear wheel horsepower as the cap, with stock LS6 engines with surprise dyno testing to keep everything fair. Today's race is going to be a 40-minute inverted grid from yesterday with Chad Ross on the front row alongside Taylor Ramey, Rod Markovits in row number 2 with yesterday's winner, Alexis Hocevar, bringing up the rear of the field. We're at the 16-turn 2.75 A layout of NOLA Motorsports, and today it's a little bit wet and damp out there with lots of puddles out the apexes that drivers will have to negotiate. It will be a standing start, which means we're going to be starting from 0 miles an hour right at the flag stand and running all the way down to turn number 1. So getting up through the gears will be super important this morning. On the front row, I mentioned Chad Ross in the number 29, a purple C5 vet. Used to run a TT2 C7 and now a driver in Spec Corvette, and working from the transition from the stability of that later platform to the slipperier and slidier C5 as we gear up here for our second race, getting the tires warmed up and getting any grip that you can because it's going to come at a premium here today. And again, early morning hours here in NOLA, so you see all the puddles on the sides of the racetrack. Going to be a big issue, especially in turn 16. And we were hearing that there was a lot of issues getting grip over there, and there's actually a crash this morning that has delayed this session just a little bit from a BMW getting into the fence at the exit of this corner. So everyone will have to be very, very cautious getting back on the power with almost 400 horsepower from those rear wheels. Nanking Motorsport tires on the rear of these cars, and yesterday tire temperature and keeping them underneath everybody was the big discussion. Today, making sure they're warm enough might be the issue. So as we roll out of turn number 16, we're going to be lining up here for our standing start. And only 4 drivers, so they'll get plenty of space to do so here. And rolling up to the flag stand. Thanks to Rennie for giving us this view from the flag stand here at NOLA Motorsports. And everyone rolling up to the start line now. And it'll be a slightly longer race from yesterday. Could be cut short just a little bit. Originally scheduled for 40 minutes. So we'll see how far into this we can get. Lined up here at the start line. 4 drivers for Spec Corvette presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires. Ready to go racing at NOLA. Chad Ross, Taylor Ramey, Rod Markovits, Alexis Hocevar on the front 2 rows. Green flag flies. Light those tires up and run down to turn number 1. Big smoke out of the Taylor Ramey machine as we run down towards turn 1. He spun those tires up big time, and that let Chad Ross pull ahead in his C5 Corvette out to drivers right. Here comes the blue car up the inside. That's the green car. That is Rod Markovits, who had a spin yesterday leaving turn number 7. Just found a little bit of mud and dirt and grime that was all over the racetrack that will still be here today. So through turn number 2, right on the tail, here comes Ramey looking up the inside of Markovits. Can't quite get alongside there. Still maybe early to make that maneuver here. Tucks in tight against the curb, throttles up. Going to try to chase him over to turn number 3 and 4. Great start, though, by Chad Ross. Got the grip out of the rear tires. Taylor Ramey lit him up. That held back Hocevar just a little bit as we come out of turn number 4 and head to 5, 6, and 7, a triple right-hand complex here. Very tight with this reverse grid. And climbing up the road now. We're actually on board with Hocevar now. And it looks like as we come out of turn number 8 and head down the back straightaway, we'll see what the lineup is when we get back to the stripe. But again, this race will be a little bit longer, so conserving tire is going to be the discussion for today. And also the other discussion we talked about is just keeping the rear underneath you with all the mud and wet that's around the racetrack. Big climb up over the curb for Hocevar. And tracking to the left again, nice and even. So far, 1, 2, and 3 all separated by less than a second and a half into the braking zone for turn 14. Hocevar again, big curb jump on driver's right, going up the racetrack. This is where Rod Markovits was a little bit faster as he looks up the inside. Is Taylor Ramey out front, I believe. No, it's still Chad Ross. Ramey is in the back here. He slid all the way to 4th as we come out of turn 16 onto the front straightaway. Timing and scoring will tell the story. Lap number 1 complete for Spec Corvette presented by Nankang Motorsport Tires. Across the line, all 4 goes the tail defensive line. Hocevar as we come across, and yes, indeed, it's Ross, Markovits, Hocevar, and Ramey, your front positions here on the brakes into turn number 1. Hocevar pops out to driver's right on the second place car of Markovits. Not enough room there. Markovits didn't leave a lane open to the inside, so Hocevar climbs the curb, but remains in 3rd for now. Markovits putting pressure on the leader at the moment of Chad Ross. And now, oh, big moment. Didn't get turned in the right way there. Oh, big bobble. Oh, the leader, Chad Ross, huge slide at turn number 3. He's going to drop 1, 2, maybe 3 positions as we head into 4. The 65 car now takes the lead of Rod Markovits, but it was Alexis Hocevar that won the race yesterday, and now he's on the other end of the story with Markovits having Hocevar in the mirror rather than out the windshield. Big climb over the curb. Hocevar's have been a lot more aggressive with the curbing today, which is a bit surprising given how damp the racetrack is. I would think that the curbing, John, would be a bit more slippery this morning with the moisture out of there on the racetrack, but it's not slowing Hocevar down. Look out to the right into the S's, shallowing it up. Both right side tires on the curb on the right, staying off the one on the left.
It looks like Hocevar is just trying whatever he can because he doesn't know the conditions of how the car is gonna handle the curb. So he's probably just testing it out. And it looks like he might like what he's doing because if they're dry enough, he's gonna keep pushing it like both these guys are doing.
Yeah, it's just interesting because yesterday we saw Hocevar being pretty cautious through the S's in particular, and he was telling us before this race started that he was seeing all the mud and water around the racetrack and just didn't want to put the car that close to the edge. But today, roles reversed. He is way more aggressive right now on the track limits than the race leader of Rod Markovits across the line for lap number 2. And we're going to see a different story across the line after Ross's big 1, 2, 3. It's Markovits, Hocevar, and Ramey. Chad Ross is behind. Wonder if he actually ended up looping it after that turn 2 slide. Whoa, look at Hocevar. That was 2 tires almost in the dirt there in turn number 1, shortening up the track significantly. But that will let Markovits drive away just a little bit. It's about 5 car lengths now into turn 3.
I can tell you what you say outside of the car when you're not on the racetrack are completely different things than what you actually do when you're chasing somebody. The adrenaline just goes and you do whatever you got to do to get on that guy's tail. And it looks like Alexis has got his adrenaline pumping right now, and he's going to work up there to try to stay in his mirror. So he's going to do whatever it takes. I can tell you that.
Some of my buddies would call that lizard braining, where you just get into your natural instinct of getting after it and going to chase down the prey. And right now, Hocevar is doing that. He's losing a little bit of ground, though. That was a really good sector for the race leader, Rod Markovits. And roles reverse. This is a fantastic battle. Yesterday, it seemed like Markovits was the faster car trapped behind Hocevar. Today, it seems like they're just dead even as they head down the back straight here. Slipstream a little bit, climbing up into the 120s, 130s. Big climb up on the curb on the right. Again, avoiding the one on the left. So Hocevar not willing to put the tires up on the curb on the left side of the racetrack, but the right-hand turns, he is absolutely drilling those.
Another thing that's going to be a factor here is this is the first time that these guys are on the 315 30 18 Nankangs. All last year, they ran the 295 35 or 295 30 18, and that was just what was available to us from Nankang, and they produced a 315 30 for us specifically because the 295, it had some issues trying to handle heat in a full race. So going to a 315 to add a little bit more volume to the tire to handle the heat better is going to be the right direction. So these guys are still trying to figure out what's the right tire temperatures, the right tire pressures, and camber. We ran the race. We ran those tires here in California, and I don't remember if anybody had to change alignment. Josh, if you're on the line, did you change your alignment much at all? I think you might have decreased your toe in the rear, and that was about it so far, right?
I did do a little bit of a decrease in the rear for Auto Club. I'm not sure if it worked that well, so I'll be playing around with it again for the next race for sure.
Well, you won all 4 races. Worked pretty well to me, it seems.
So more tire, obviously going to help with the heat or avoiding heat soak in that rubber, which again was what we were worrying about yesterday. What I was worried about yesterday was lightening the rear tires too much, sliding them around, building too much heat. With a 315, that's significantly more rubber, and will let you get away with a little bit more and let these cars run a little longer. And these are a little bit longer races than we normally run, so that's going to be super helpful. Hocevar continues to hunt Rod Markovits here. That was a great exit out of turn 7. Big splash through the puddles for Markovits as we head into the S's here. Look at Hocevar out to driver's right. Not really passing opportunity there, though. Brake lights on and the race leader. And looks like Hocevar will have to get settled in here for the trip through the S's. Guys, it's so hard to make a pass through there. But just looking out to the right, and that's Hocevar telling Markovits that I'm here. Keep your eyes in the mirror because I'm not too far back.
Yeah, these cars, you can just see how equally. Look at these going in for this.
Oh, he's up the inside.
Wow.
4th position in turn 14. Side by side, slams over the curb. 4 tires on the right. Failed attempt to pass there, but that got really wild. Hocevar is there and ready to party.
Yeah, Rod looks like Rod gave him the half car that he's allowed to give him, and looks like Alexis chose the curb instead of making any contact there. So that's close racing. But like I was saying, there is very little opportunity to pass, especially when these cars are just so darn equal. You've got to get on the gas.
Down the front straightaway now. Here comes Hocevar with a great run. A little bit defensive for Markovits, but Hocevar is going to have another look up the inside for turn 1. Not quite there. Whoa, look at Markovits a little bit sideways on corner entry, and right behind them out of view is Taylor Ramey, who's only, a car length and a half behind Hocevar. So really it's a 3-car fight at the front of the field. Hocevar wider entry here, going to arc it in late. There's a climb up on the curb on the left, but he's going to track out a little wider here. That's going to hurt him through this next section. But Hocevar seems like he's got an advantage in the places that matter. We talked about this yesterday, where he was able to slightly pull away on the straightaways, and it was in the S's that Markovits was a little bit better. And the problem for Markovits was he was better in a place where you couldn't pass, but that's not true for Hocevar today. He's able to close right up to him and at least make an attempt to pass. Here we go again, closing in on the brakes, tucking it in a little bit tighter, a little earlier turn in. Bit of a slide there, almost out to the curbing. Look at this run. This is going to be a pass here, guys. Not quite. Splashed through the water again for Markovits. And Hocevar lifted. That stopped the run while it was happening. And again, turning in a little sooner, straightening up this complex. Nicely done, stringing it through. Later apex that time for Hocevar. Oh, big slide to the right there. Saw the rear step out, but look at how much he's gaining here. Into turn 14, this will be another passing opportunity. Big dive on the brakes. Watch the puddles. Slams through one there. ABS potentially vibrating underfoot as he completes the pass for the lead. What a great move there by Alexis Hocevar, and he goes to the top spot over Rod Markovits. Now roles reversed. Can Rod re-close up on Hocevar and make the pass he couldn't do yesterday? Through 16, this is the damp corner that everyone was warning us about. Oh, big slide there for Markovits. Got power down a little too early, but across the line this time. Alexis Hocevar, yesterday's winner, leads Spec Corvette presented by Nankang Motorsport Tires. Then Markovits, Taylor Ramey, second and third, and Chad Ross a little farther behind, down in 4th into turn 1. Whoa, look at Markovits on the brakes, trying to close up in the braking zone. Couldn't get close enough, though. Still 5-6 car lengths back, stringing through turn 2.
It looks like Alexis is starting to put a couple lengths on him right now after that straightaway area there. So Chad Ross, I believe, is behind both of those guys right now. Not too far back. He's waiting for these guys to battle it again so that he can try to take advantage of some of their lost lap time in the midst of their battle.
Yeah, at the line last time, it was Markovits that was 0.8 behind Hocevar. Taylor Ramey 0.7 behind Markovits, and Chad Ross was about 15 seconds back. I think he might have had a loop or something, because he had a over 2 minute and 5 second, 2 minute 9 second lap that moment when we saw him get loose, and he's been lapping in the mid 203s, 204 since then. I'm not sure that he's going to make up a whole lot of ground back there 15 seconds back, so maybe just driving conservatively. But you know who's not driving conservatively is Hocevar. He has just lit up and gotten out of town. That's 10, 15 car lengths up the road now and continues to pull away. We'll see if Markovits can close that gap, but he hasn't been as aggressive with the curbing and hasn't been straight lining as much and not carrying quite as much momentum as Hocevar. The run into 14 last lap around just showed me that Hocevar's line through there was setting him up for the short straight from 13 to 14, and it worked out really, really well.
Yeah, I think Rod might have some flashbacks of yesterday and trying to keep the car from sliding out from underneath him. So he's trying to be a little bit careful and try to hold on to second place, because if he just spins out again, he might lose it all off the podium itself. So he's probably thinking about what happened yesterday and just trying to play it safe, keep off the curbing a little bit. And Alexis looks like he's trying to check out here. So it'd be interesting to see if Rod steps it up a little bit and starts to push it a little bit more. He knows it's a 40-minute race, so he's just biding his time right now. But let's see what happens.
Well, last time by, it was 0.8 between their two race leaders. Now it's 1.7 seconds, so a really good gain there for Hocevar. He ran his best lap of the race. So did Rod Markovits, and so did Taylor Ramey. So the conditions also probably improving as the sun burns off the fog here just a little bit and the puddles begin to dry up. That's going to help these cars. They should go a little bit faster as the day goes on. And you mentioned Markovits maybe driving a little bit more conservatively, and it seems like that is the case. But Hocevar's got clear racetrack now, so all he has to do is focus out front. I don't think he's feeling a lot of pressure right now. If Markovits could get up to the rear tailpipes, whoa, big slide there for Markovits. Yep. Drifting sideways out of turn number 4.
Just touched that puddle right there. As soon as I saw that he hit that puddle, that's when the car started to go. So he's being cautious, but he's also trying to push it a little bit and maybe in the wrong places.
Well, it's interesting because NOLA Motorsports, because of how bumpy and uneven the surface is here in the Bayou, you're not driving a typical wet racing line. The track isn't really wet. It might be a little bit damp from the morning dew, but it's not soaking wet where you'd want to be running offline to stay out of the rubber and oil. I mean, you want to run the racing line. The problem is there's foot deep puddles at all the apexes, so you can run the normal racing line until you can't. And,
right.
And there's a lot of puddles around here that will make that a distraction. And Markovits trying to stay hooked up to the inside. You can see a couple places where the track is darker, right around where the concrete curbing meets the pavement. A lot of times the water will get stuck between those two surfaces. And the second you get water on these tires, it's going to be not a great time, especially when you're going at 140 miles an hour. And turn 16, you can see 4 or 5 puddles there on the apexes. And here's another big one here as Markovits comes out of the final corner. There's a big one on the right, but across the line this time. And we'll see if Hocevar improves again. Last time by was a 157.4. This time was a 157.9. Markovits is a 159.2. So he's now 3 seconds back. Taylor Ramey fell back a little bit that time, a 201.6. He has fallen 4 seconds off of Hocevar in the 26 car.
Yeah, for this race group, yesterday and today, Spec Corvette was one of the bigger race groups today. So it looks like they shrunk a little bit because we lost a few cars from Walt Davis has a steering rack issue, power steering issue, and then we saw the issue with Ben Hocevar with his crank pulley walking on him. So we lost a couple cars there. So, but even so, there's only 8 cars total in the race group, with half of them being Spec Corvettes, and then yesterday with Spec Corvette being a majority of the races here in this region. So it'd be pretty cool to see more racers come out and join Spec Corvette in this region, and they potentially have the potential to be the biggest race group of the NOLA Motorsports region.
Yeah, this is, basically this is like Spec Miata, but with V8 engines, which I got a chance to drive a Spec Miata. I can only imagine it'd be more fun with more power. And that's sort of the same formula that's been applied here in Spec Corvette. And it's an interesting formula for sure, because, everyone always talks about how street tire and lots of horsepower is a great combination for compelling racing. And that seems like the format that's worked out really well here, John. Less grip and more power is always a good thing for a driver. And you can really put it back in their hands. And there's one of those Caymans up the inside, Cayman GT4 car. So a little bit of traffic to negotiate here as well.
This should be interesting. So they're out of class, so hopefully they don't bother each other. But yeah, I think I saw a couple Caymans on grid. There might be 2 or 3 of them on the track today. But yeah, Spec Corvette has grown considerably. Now an official class in the Northeast, with Phoenix Performance kind of spearheading that location, and plugging cars in that area, with Dave Sanders being our new Northeast region director up there. So Dave, if you're listening right now, he's a veteran T1 driver, which is kind of the original Spec Corvette, where it's showroom stock racing, that kind of got away with the rules and allowed a lot of different modifications. The car just got the rules got out of control. So Dave Sanders out in the New York area is going to be spearheading that region as the region director, and trying to get T1 showroom stock racing back into play with the Spec Corvette platform. So Spec Corvette's an official class now in the Northeast, and within a schedule. So the schedule's posted on speccorvette.com if you want to take a look. And we have the NOLA region, Northeast, Florida, Colorado, Great Lakes, and of course the West Coast. So pretty exciting, and we're excited for the homecoming at NCM in July 4th weekend. So we should have we're looking at 15-20 cars right now that are going to be running in the NCM National Corvette Museum race. So all regions going to be in attendance. So that should be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I wasn't able to be there for last year's NCM race. I had my buddy Tom O'Gorman, a two-time winner and Probably World Challenge, join you guys for that one. So I unfortunately missed that one, but I can't wait for that. That's going to be great to see such a big field of cars. Checking back in on the race, we saw that Cayman GT4 go by our race leader, Alexis Hocevar. And he was a little slower last time by then, second place Rod Markovits. So that gap might be closing back up. And we're kind of getting into the middle portion of this race, John, where you're not going to want to be pushing your car to its absolute limit. You're going to want to start to conserve a bit. And right. How you can conserve and what pace you are when you're conserving is really the big question mark. So across the line, let's take a look at the times. Hocevar, a 2 minute, let's see, across the line. Hocevar 158.4, Rod Markovits a 158.7. So a hair slower, but they're starting to get into that middle part of this race where it's all about conserving tire and conserving brakes, and especially in the brakes in turn. Whoa, Markovits way deep into turn 1. He's going to run wide, and that's what I was talking about, is missing the braking points. The other thing is that it's so bumpy down there in turn 1 that these cars will probably skip and hop around quite a bit, and it can really throw you off. We saw Markovits pushing the braking zone so much, standing the car up on its nose, that it was really unstable getting down there. Do these guys have any way to adjust? Oh, Markovits, big slide again. These guys this thing hanging out of control. But is there a way to control brake bias in these cars? Is that something you guys can tweak, or is that just stock?
No,
stock
it's
system?
All stock factory ABS control. That's it. So, and ABS is the touchy system in this car, and when it works okay. You just got to make sure you are sensitive to the ABS. If you stand on this on the brakes way too hard to activate the ABS, it actually goes into this thing called ice mode, and really relieves the braking pressure, and the car starts to go much further than what you think it's going to go. So you got to be really sensitive to ABS, and many people will be really surprised how much the car gets into ABS. They don't realize it until you actually lose ABS. I'd say 80-90% of the people use ABS all the time and don't realize it. For guys that are tracking their cars out there, I highly suggest going out there, on a closed track or on a track day where there's nobody around, pull the ABS fuse, the 40 amp fuse in the box in the engine bay, and go out there and see what really happens. Once I did that, I couldn't believe how much ABS I was using, and that told me, I need to back off the brakes and squeeze it more than jam it. So it's a big difference without ABS on these cars.
And we were talking yesterday about those ABS systems that most of these cars probably are running stock, but also BMW ABS systems can be utilized as well?
No, we don't allow the BMW ABS system to be put in. It's a good amount of cost and work to do, so it's probably a $4,000 version. If the cars were unsafe, that's one thing, but it's just more or less learning and being cognizant of the system and mastering it, really. And you shouldn't have any issues. But once just like anything, you push the threshold of any ABS system, and it's going to bite you back. So we don't allow the BMW. It's just a big expense. Really haven't seen the need for it. It's, again, just coming down to managing your system and understanding it and practicing with it. It's not a bad system. It's just not the best.
Yeah, it's interesting, talking about braking and cars with downforce. Generally, you'd be hammering the brake pedal really, really hard in the first bit of travel, then kind of releasing and trail braking off into the corners. Seems like with these cars, kind of squeezing on, squeezing off seems to be the best application of the brakes here. Also, the tricky conditions. I mean, I'm sure the bumps in turn one don't help here. This is one of the bumpiest racetracks I know of in the country, other than maybe Sebring. But down the front straightaway, these cars are, I'm sure the Penske Racing shocks are keeping them relatively stable. But when I was here a couple months ago in November, we would see cars bottoming out on the front straightaway, hopping and skipping across the surface because the entire racetrack from one end to the other only has 1 foot of elevation change. And I feel like most of that's just in bumps. It's really not an even racetrack because it's built basically on wetland essentially. So it definitely heaves in areas, and it can make for a really violent experience, especially in the heavily utilized portions of the racetrack like that turn one braking zone.
Yeah, for sure. Any bumps, the C5 is really sensitive too. So you definitely have to tip in first, get the nose to settle, and put some pressure on the tires, and then you can squeeze it pretty hard. So I'm not terribly good at it. I know Josh is much better than me at it. We've gone into braking zones together, and I can tell you he's outbroken me several times. But yeah, it's definitely something that you have to master in the C5, and part of that is and that's why Spec Corvette makes great drivers, in my opinion, is because you truly have to learn how to drive a car in its rawest form. So there's not a lot of computer control. Traction control is basically useless, so most people turn it off. And the ABS system, again, it's a very touchy system, so you must be a really good driver and understand the car and the system itself.
We see Markovits down a little bit deep into turn one once again, and then slid through turn number 2. So still has those rear tires kind of slipping and sliding around. Last time by, he was 7 seconds behind Alexis Hocevar, so it seems like he is losing a bit more time. A little curbing on the left there. That's that ripple curbing, which of which there's plenty around the track out portions. Right there on the driver's left, there's some really gnarly ripple curbing. That stuff can collect water, and it's also not very kind to the Penske Racing shocks. There's a big moment there for Markovits again, clobbering that stuff. It just really a safety feature, keep you off the grass and the edge of the racetrack. But, sometimes it's a speed advantage to use it on the apexes, but on track out, it can be a pretty upsetting place to be, especially on a damp morning. So Markovits exploring the limits of the track right now, but it seems like he's struggling with rear grip at the moment.
Yeah, I'm interested to know what Rod's running for tire pressures. And again, this is a brand new tire for these guys. And I'm watching Rod drive, and I just feel like every turn he's kind of struggling for rear grip. So I wonder if where his tire pressures are at, and where these guys have kind of decided to set them, or if they're setting them differently from each other, and the alignment. So he might be a touch high. I don't know. It kind of complicates it a little bit with the wet conditions. Is where do you set them? Because the tire temperatures aren't going to be as high coming up during the race as what would be on a sunny day and on 90 degrees, right? So these guys have to kind of set their tire pressures a little bit high to compensate for the cooler weather and the damp conditions, right? But does he set it too high, and now he's got a rear grip issue because he's over inflated the tire?
Right. The tire pressure is always, that big question mark that, changing depending on the weather, depending on how long the race is going to be. I mean, you don't want to set them too low and then wear your tires out by lap 5 because you've got too much friction on that contact patch. So, tire pressures, I'm sure it'd be interesting to talk to Alexis and Rod after to compare tire pressures. But we've also seen Hocevar be a little bit kinder to the right foot and not quite hammer down so much on corner exit. He's been a little bit more gentle and hasn't been sliding around as much. I'm sure that's helping tire temperature as well, which you mentioned the change to the 315 tire, which is going to help with the heating issue. But still, if you're drifting out there and looking like Formula D for 35 minutes, it's certainly not going to be kind to the Nanking Motorsport tires. So conservation in a race this long still is a problem.
Yep, absolutely. So it's a learning curve for everyone, and myself included. So as the year goes on, we're going to get more tire data and understand how these 315s work and do tire temperatures and whatnot. So we should be able to dial these in and spread the word on what really works on these cars and with alignment and tire pressures to start. So I believe what these guys are, they might be running, I think 33, 34 hot is what we were running the first time out here at Auto Club, right around that range. So interested to see what these guys are going to be running. Josh, do you recall what your tire temperatures or tire pressures were hot for Auto Club?
Yeah, I try to keep them down around 32 psi hot.
Okay.
Although I got pretty slidey in the infield at Auto Club, but I think that had some to do with taking the toe out. So the car was pretty good going around the oval, and it was pretty good in a straight line, but it didn't like to turn all that much.
Right. Okay. So 32 hot, 30, 32, 34, and we'll do some more tire temp analysis to really understand what the NS2R likes in the 315 on these cars.
Keeping an eye on the lap times for the race leader. Hocevar's last lap was a 158.6. He's been running mid 158s for the last 5 or 6 laps now, and he's been very consistent. Markovits has also been consistent, just a little bit slower, 2 minutes, 0.271 seconds last time by. So Hocevar's found a nice, comfortable pace to run, and is looking very sorted right now. And yesterday was on the defense for most of the race with Rod Markovits kind of barking up the mirror. But today, after he's driven away, he doesn't really have much to worry about, so he can run his own pace, where Markovits is still pushing to try to make up some of that ground. But it looks like Markovits has dialed it back a notch just to keep the rear up underneath him and not exacerbate the issues he's been having. But that time through turn 7, nice clean line. But he's now back about 10 seconds from Hocevar with presumably at most 12 minutes left in this race. So if he's got any hope of catching Hocevar, it's going to require a mistake from the race leader. Otherwise, it's just about taking this all the way to the end and finishing out a nice race.
Yeah, I know. Alexis has got a lot of experience, and I'm hoping that he is trying to just drive a nice pace right now. It looks like he's just found a nice groove for him. He's not pushing it too hard to make any mistakes and go off, or make one spin, and Rod's going to be right there if he does that.
Through turn 16, and again, the puddles will likely continue to shrink. It seems like they've lightened up just a little bit, and especially as drivers, in the other categories run through them, it'll probably help dissipate them a little bit more. Cross the line this time will be our 16th lap complete. Out front, Hocevar continues. That time was 158.9, so only 0.3 off his previous. Markovits comes across the line soon. At least here he comes across the line. What will his time be? 2:02.186, so about 2 seconds slower. So the consistency still is there for the race leader, passing some traffic from the other run group, and tucks it in neatly for turn number 4. And speaking of the other driver that started up on the pole in this race, Chad Ross, still out there running about 36 seconds off of class leader Hocevar, with Taylor Ramey about 20 seconds off. So with the rest of the race coming up here, last 10 or so minutes, Alexis Hocevar leading. I'm curious if, well, you see climbing the curbs there, he's still getting after it a little bit. I don't think he's completely settled in, but looks like he's pretty well comfortable at this point. I don't think he's really going to get himself into a bad situation running this pace.
Right. Unfortunate that his son Ben Hocevar had the mechanical issue yesterday, because I know Ben will be running right up front with these guys. He's generally the hot shoe and pushes the limits everywhere. I've raced with him at COTA a couple years ago, and he certainly is very fast, very aggressive driver, and awesome to race with. So fortunately he's not racing today, but his dad is, so he gets to celebrate a win here if Alexis takes it home. So.
It would be 2 in a row for Alexis this weekend after winning the trophy race yesterday by about a second or two. And it would be the second win of the second race of the weekend for him if he were to get that done. So that would be a nice way to cap off the weekend. Tucks it in nice and tight for turn 16. To cross the line this time through. Now, remember, we were a little bit behind on the run groups today, so we could expect a white flag a little bit early, but this time through we will not get it. We are 30 minutes into this potentially 40-minute race. And Hocevar that time through a 159.6, only about 2 seconds off of his best time of the day. And across the line, here comes that Miata that was one of the lap cars for Hocevar to negotiate. And there is the second place car, Rod Markovits, 206.5. That was a big decrease. Didn't see if he had issues last time around there, John, but looked like he might have had another big slip up.
Yeah, he fell off the pace quite a bit. He must have, he's sliding all over the place. There's something either going on, or he's just pushing it too hard, or the tires are overheating. You can tell that he's kind of tiptoeing that car all over the place on the edge of control. So he's trying to go around as fast as possible, but it doesn't seem to have the grip that Alexis has. So He's going wide out there sideways again. Yeah, that car is something's struggling with that car right now, as opposed to what I see in Alexis's car. And again, it could be coming down to tires or tire pressures. So
Well, at this point, I mean, it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think
yeah,
it's not going to really give him a chance to cool anything off. Past some lap traffic there, shallow entry to this corner. That's going to cause the car to kick out unless he lifts off the throttle, which he did mid corner there. So that will help. But again, the more you slide around these tires, the worse that heating issue is going to get if that's what's happening. It doesn't look like, I mean, I don't think it could be anything else really. I mean, unless he's just, he's gotten into some puddles the wrong way a few times, but we've been seeing him get loose mid corner without touching any of that water. So I think it's just those rear tires. He just lit up a few too many times, and it's just hard to get temperature out of those things without really backing down the pace. So he's really struggling, but I bet you it's a whole lot of fun there, John. I mean, I'm sure he's having a blast wringing that car's neck around NOLA Motorsports here today. I mean, that's, every driver wants to have a lot of power, not a lot of grip, but here is the white flag for the race leader. That's Alexis Hocevar under the white flag one more time around NOLA.
yeah, these cars are tons of fun. That's the one feedback we get out of a lot of people that run, aero cars and with full slicks, cars that just are on rails all the time. And once you get into a Spec Corvette with a little bit of looseness to it, it's a much more raw experience, and it kind of sets people back to learning how to drive again and really understand a vehicle and how to put it in the right place without having all these so much grip. So it's a great car to start with and have a lot of fun with out there.
And this is a great racetrack to let these cars stretch their legs a little bit. I mentioned yesterday that the front straightaway here, with its longest configuration, which is no longer run, is about a mile long, but we cut that about a quarter of the way short with the layout that we're running here. Well, you'll see speeds, well over 140 getting into turn one. That's when you get on those binders and slow the car down and get down into second, potentially third gear to jump that curb and carry on through one of the tight and twisty sections. Then you kind of do this triple right-hand complex before heading onto a short back straightaway, leading into this this pretty technical right-left S's combination, which I'm sure has got to be so much fun in a low aero car like these C5 Vets. Climbs up over the curb on the right, does Alexis Hocevar. Started dead last in this race, but got a great start past Rod Markovits and Taylor Ramey, and managed to jump up to the front of this race and has not looked back since. Got by Rod Markovits after a slip up in turn number 3. Actually, that was Chad Ross that he passed there. It was turn 14 that he made the move on Rod Markovits, but through turns 14, 15, and 16, only one more time for Alexis Hocevar. And from last to best, as he comes out of turn 16 onto the front straightaway, 2 races, 2 wins for the silver number 26. Alexis Hocevar comes on through, and he wins the Spec Corvette presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires Sunday Trophy race here at NOLA Motorsports. Second place, Rod Markovits, who will be very relieved to see that checkered flag. I think those tires got flames shooting out of them across the line. They're so hot, and he will bring it up in second. Taylor Ramey started on the front row. He will come home in third, with Chad Ross, the pole sitter. After that initial start, just dropped off the pace and has since been running around, just conserving the tires and that car. He will come home in fourth place. Checkered flag there under the bridge is Markovits. Last lap, a 2:04.111, so he was about 6 seconds off of his best time. So Hocevar was 5 seconds off his best, so those rear tires were just screaming for a little bit of relief, and they will get that now as the checkered flag comes out here at NOLA. So, John, that was a pretty entertaining race at the beginning. It sort of settled into a conservation race at the end, but that's sort of what you expect with the street tire on a long race like this. But these cars running those Nanking Motorsport tires and the Penske Racing shocks and the Willwood brakes, TPS Motorsports parts, as well as Redline Oil, Track Spec Motorsports, hood vents, radiators, aero and sway bars, Spec Racing wheels and roll cages, Sparco USA driver safety belts, and more. All these partners that help put the parts on these cars. Pretty cool to watch another race here in Spec Corvette. Always an entertaining show. I love watching cars slide around here, John, and today was no exception.
Absolutely. Different conditions, and these guys are pushing the cars pretty hard. So awesome race today.
When's our next race? Where are we headed next here for Spec Corvette? I'm curious. NOLA's a pretty fast racetrack. Is it a tight and technical one or another fast one coming up on the schedule?
We're going so the West Coast is going to be head into Buttonwillow Raceway end of February. I think it's the 26th, 27th, or the last weekend in February there. So it'll be the West Coast. So you'll see Josh and myself and a few other guys going out there and battling it out at Buttonwillow. So that's a great track. That is one of our favorite tracks. It's a very technical track and great racing there. Lots of passing opportunities. So lots of fun to be had there.
Awesome. Well, another great race here today for Spec Corvette presented by Nanking Motorsport Tires. I'm Kyle Heyer here with John Wynn from NOLA Motorsports. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time here on Spec Corvette. Make sure to like the Facebook page to join us for more in the future and watch more slipping and sliding and great racing action here in Spec Corvette. Thanks for watching.